Yo, what's going on, everybody? It is a little bit after 1 p.m. here in Crystal Lake, Illinois, and it's time for another live stream. Today is Tuesday, August 22nd, 2023. Sorry I'm running a little bit late, but I had a extra long visit at the mechanic this morning. I went in for an oil change, and believe it or not, a car with 190,000 miles on it. There was a lot of things for me and the mechanic to discuss today, so that's why we're running a little bit late. But I'm glad that you guys are all here because today we're going to have on a guest. One of the authors of this book that I've been reading lately, Becoming a Sustainable Runner. We're going to have Tina Muir on the podcast here very shortly. I'm very excited to have her on. Tina is someone that I met in person for the first time in last November, or I guess it's December, at TRE. And since then, we've had many interactions, and I'm very glad to be able to read this book, but also to have her on the live stream today. Before we bring her on, though, let's say hi to everyone listening in on the audio-only version on the podcast. Hopefully you guys are listening to this on your run very, very early in the morning, because I think pretty much everywhere in the country right now, it's super hot. So hopefully it's either very early in the morning or you're in the air conditioning on a treadmill, getting your miles in. And for everyone else watching this later, but not live on YouTube, welcome to you guys as well. This is the number one running podcast to listen to, where I think we'll be able to talk about both world championships and UTMB in the same episode. I don't feel like there's a lot of other podcasts that are going to be trying to tackle both of those topics at the same time, but maybe we'll get into some of that today. But the main thing I want to talk about is this book. You guys know that I'm not very good at reading physical books. My preference is audiobooks, but this one is one that I've actually been reading. It takes me a long time. I just fall asleep as soon as I sit down with a physical book. But this one, I've been able to stay awake for. It's actually been pretty good. A lot of things that have kind of been on my mind that I've been thinking about already. So I feel like it's really timely. And hopefully we can dive into some of those topics today. Looks like we got a lot of people here in the chat. Shannon's here. She's super excited because where did that one go, Shannon? She says, hey, Co-Famsy, it's been a while. Love that Tina is on and that she can claim her as her St. Louis running buddy. Might be a stretch, but she's too nice to say otherwise. Awesome. Let's bring her on now. Without further ado, here is Tina. What's going on, Tina? How are you?
I'm good. How are you? And I feel like I should add that part of the reason we were late is because I didn't realize that we weren't recording. And so I gave a really long answer to a question that Mike had. And I think it's as much my fault as it was yours, the mechanic. Well, 90% my fault. So sorry to keep everyone waiting.
No worries. And glad to have you here. In the chat, people are talking about how hot it is everywhere where they are. How is it in St. Louis? I remember St. Louis summers as being particularly humid. How is it there now?
Yeah, well, I thought I saw Shannon earlier. And yes, I would consider you my running buddy. Yeah, I think it's like in the mid 90s. Feels the dew point is like 80. So 100 and something feels like. So it is, I feel like you need like a knife to like whack your way through the humidity. So, but I'm actually taking a few days off running. So I feel like I chose a good few days.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's gross.
Two things. One is I remember when I lived in St. Louis, I used to work in a research lab at the med school. And in the summers, it would be so hot just from the walk from the parking lot to the lab that when I got to the lab, I would just go into the walk-in fridge where we had all like our like ingredients and stuff that we needed to keep cold and refrigerated. It was just a giant walk-in cooler. And I would just stay in there for a good 5-10 minutes. But I got to work every day.
You just reminded me. Did anyone play the Lara Croft game on the computer a long time ago? And she, like, you used to be able to lock her in the fridge. I remember that. I don't know why that just came to me, but she used to get locked in the fridge, or at least the version I had. So, yeah, that's what I just thought of when you talked about walking into a fridge. So Lara Croft, which I haven't thought of in probably 10 plus years.
Nice. Stevie76 says Kofuzi looks different the day after finding the button on his trekking poles. Yesterday, we went through a little bit of an ordeal here. I bought my first pair of trekking poles and I tried to, I guess, unfurl them. I don't know what the word is, and put them in like active trekking mode because they break apart into three pieces, and I tried to extend them and I couldn't figure it out. Everyone here had a very good time with that.
I bet. That's fun.
But I think you just came back from Leadville, right?
I did. Yeah.
So I think maybe you have had some very recent experience with some of your trekking poles then, huh?
I actually didn't use poles then. I do have some poles, but I've never actually used them. So maybe someday they'll get use. But yeah, I wasn't using the poles, but I was running as a essentially guide slash pacer slash crew for Brian Reynolds, who's a double amputee who was attempting to be the first double amputee to run 50 miles, 100 miles. I think he might be the first double amputee to run 50 miles, which he did. We got cut off by the time. He was using poles. I was actually holding the back of his shirt, like gripping it
Okay.
most of the way, so that if he tripped, which he did all the time, I could like pull back, so like keep him upright. So I feel like I like did this for like 3 hours. So it
Wow.
was yeah, it was challenging in a different way. I was doing like a dance with his feet, like trying to get as close to him as I could without
Mhm,
tripping him
mhm.
up. So it was concentration.
How do you get involved in something like that? That sounds really difficult.
Yes, it is. I got involved. I met Brian through. I run quite often as a guide for visually impaired runners, and this is in the book as well. That all these kind of give back ways you could be a part of the community. So there's visually impaired runners. Brian is an amputee. Achilles International has athletes of all kinds of needs and requirements that you can run with. And it's just kind of once you enter into that community, and I definitely recommend you should do it at some point. I think you would really enjoy it and be really good at it. And anyone really watching this. But yeah, so I'd done quite a lot of that. I really am a big believer in giving back, like through volunteering or pacing or crewing or carrying the sign. Carrying the sign in a marathon. Any way you can be a part of someone else's day is just a really meaningful and powerful experience, and makes you appreciate your own running more.
Um, I know that I've seen at CIM that it has been the visually impaired like US championships
Yes.
for a couple. Is it always at CIM?
Actually, this year they're no longer doing it, but
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
up until this year, I think it was every year at CIM. It was their national championship, but I don't think it. Well, I know it's not happening this year. I'm
They're
pretty
just not
sure.
having the event, or it's not at CIM. Do you know?
Not having it.
Oh, okay, that's a shame.
Yeah.
I always found that that was really inspiring to be
Mhm.
able to run and cheer on those guys, and knowing that they're um, in a pretty competitive race themselves. And it's just
Yeah.
like, and they're not. I mean, they're running fast too.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's like I don't know. Like, I mean, I've thought about being a pacer for like that too, because I'm just like, well, the number of people that can run as fast as some of these guys are running is not as big as people would think. And then someone
Mm.
that's willing to run, I mean, that's like takes pacing to a whole nother level, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
Sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, well, actually, what year was it? 2019, maybe. I remember being at the because I'd only gone halfway with the athlete because I was pregnant at the time. I'd gone back and showered, and then I went to watch people coming in. And I remember seeing this Rich Hunter, who is an athlete who's visually impaired, and Scott Jurek next to him. But
Mhm.
Scott looked like he was dying, like his eyes were like bulging out of his head, and it was like the most surreal thing, being like, "Is that Scott Jurek struggling along the road?" But it was kind of amazing for me because I was like, "Huh, he's a human." He
Yeah.
struggles too. And like he was, but if he's pacing, he's supposed to be the one who's like very comfortable, but he definitely didn't look like he was comfortable right then. So it was good to see that even people who do these incredible things still struggle in a marathon.
Oh, amazing.
Mhm.
Amazing. So then, after your experience at Leadville, are you looking forward to the action at UTMB next week?
Uh, well, I'm not going. Did you know that?
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Well, I didn't know
Yeah,
if you were following or
following
excited
it.
to
I mean, I will
watch them.
somewhat. I
Okay.
don't honestly follow elite athletes that
Oh,
much.
okay.
Like the guy, as these elite athletes were coming past Brian and I
Mhm.
wasn't like, oh, there's this person, oh, there's that person. I only really knew one of the top guys, so I don't actually follow it that much. But UTMB for me is one I do really want to do someday. So I hold a little bit more interest in that one. And obviously, Courtney doing it is uh, I mean, she's just insane with what she's managing to do. So I'll be definitely watching that piece, but it's more just someday I want to be there.
Okay. And then also what's going on, which I think that you might be following as well, is World Championships are happening in Budapest right now. Have you
Mhm.
been following the action?
Again, not much, but
Oh,
I
okay.
was told to watch the 10K, and my
Oh,
husband
yeah.
and I watched it last night, and that was pretty dramatic. So the
It was
women's
very
10K,
surpri it was very surprising. Um,
yes. But other than that, not
especially,
really.
yeah, I mean, especially just the first night with a lot of fall. I mean, hopefully, I'm not giving any spoilers out for anyone that was maybe hoping to watch it later because it's been a couple of days now. I feel like with Worlds, you gotta like, it's like you gotta eat at the buffet quickly because otherwise, it's just going to be gone.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that 10,000 meters, like the fall at the end was
Yeah.
not on my bingo card of things that were going to
No,
happen in
no,
that
no.
event.
No, especially not who fell. Yeah, and I'm sure I'm going to hear in a few days if Laura Muir gets a medal or something. I'm going to get a load of messages. Was that you? Was that you? Or like, oh, congrats to your sister. And I'm like, no, no,
Yeah.
not related. Like same name, yes, but not the same person.
Well,
So,
I told you the first time that we met
yes.
at TRE that I was just like, I was not familiar with your prior elite athlete like career, and I was also not that familiar with Laura Muir's career either until I think that year at Worlds. And then all of a sudden I'm hearing like broadcasters, like in replays, people talking about how well Laura Muir is doing. And I'm like, wait, the woman with the podcast? I didn't realize she was like an elite 1500 meter runner.
Yeah.
And I was just very confused a lot of the time. And it took me a long time. And to this day, I still have to like every time, like when I did like all the promotional materials for like today's live stream, I was like, do I have the right mirror here? I'm not, I got to double check.
You forgot my name was Tina?
No, it's not. I know your name is Tina, but I always like, for some reason, like, I don't know if it's because Muir is like a harder last name for me to pronounce for some reason. I just like my mind, it's just like, it has to go extra slow whenever I'm writing down Tina and not accidentally Laura.
Yeah, no, I've had plenty of people say to me like, congrats on winning the Fifth Ave mile. It's like, sorry, that wasn't me. But I do wonder if anyone ever says to her like, love your podcast. And she's like, huh? What are you talking about? So someday I should interview her and be like, we should just talk about all the ways we've been compared. Although maybe she doesn't have any, I don't know.
I don't think that she's done all that many podcasts. I don't, like I don't listen to all the podcasts, but I feel like I cover a lot of them, or not cover, but like I get to a lot of them, but I don't think I've really heard a lot of interviews of Laura Muir before.
No, me neither. I've never asked her. I should.
You should get her on. I think
like, hey, sis.
I would be like, finally, they're both in the same place at the same time. I've never seen them in the same place at the same time before. So that puts that rumor to
or would
rest.
that make it even more confusing for you? Because now you're like, now they're both in the same place. And I don't understand.
Maybe. I don't know.
My brain's exploding.
All right. Let's get to the book though. Becoming a Sustainable Runner. You and Zoe Rome wrote this book together. Tell me about like, where does this book come from? Like, what was like the impetus for it? Like, how did this get to be in my hands?
Yes, I want to answer that question, but first I got stuck on what Lev and Martha wrote here.
Okay.
Isn't hard to pronounce. So I think you should read that one because I agree. Like, it's not, I don't feel like it's that confusing, but so many people get stumbled upon it.
Yeah. Martha's saying Muir isn't hard to pronounce, like Muir Woods in California, or John Muir, the Sierras, the Muir Trail, etc. I think it's the UIR. Visually, it just, it's like, I don't have dyslexia, but I feel like for that 3-letter combo, I might be a little bit dyslexic.
Okay.
I think that's
you're not alone. I'd say like 60% of people struggle with my last name.
That's very generous.
Okay. So how did this book come about? Well, we kind of mentioned a bit a few minutes ago that I was a former elite athlete, ran for Great Britain, was kind of at the peak of my career, and I quit rather dramatically. Became the first elite athlete to talk about having amenorrhea or not having a period for 9 years. Really brought that conversation to the forefront. And I promised myself in that moment, because when I quit, I was like, I am done with the sport forever. Like, I hated it. And I don't use the word hate lightly, but I hated it. And so I promised myself I wanted to do it differently. And so over the kind of growth I went through between 2017 and kind of my second daughter, who was born in 2020, I went through this understanding of like learning to change the relationship between myself as a runner, particularly my identity as an elite athlete. When I quit, I was just about to launch Running for Real, my business. And I genuinely thought no one, and you'll understand this because obviously like this is your whole thing. But for me, I was like, no one's going to want to listen to me. They're going to be like, you're a has-been, like, go away from me. Why would I care what you think? And so I genuinely thought no one would be interested in what I had to say because they'd see me as a quitter or someone who didn't know what they were doing because they weren't fast anymore. But people really actually felt more connected, resonated more with me. And so during this time, I realized that I had to change my relationship to my body, to myself, to running, and so I worked on that. I'm still good, right? I'm just
Yeah, you're good. I
was like, I'm just here on my own. I'm like,
yeah, well, you know what? I was on the screen,
okay,
here with you, but then like I
all
felt
right,
like
good. You
you
can.
were
I
saying
just
some
wanted to
really
check.
nice things, and so I wanted to make sure the focus was on you and not me like nodding along. So
Okay, thank
I
you.
switched up the angle a little
All
bit.
right, I'll
Sorry,
keep
that's
going. I was just
distracting.
like, am I talking to the void? So then I started, redefining what running was, redefining who I was, redefining the way that I looked, because that was determining a lot of what was going on within me, was feeling like I had to look a certain way. And so I knew that if I wanted to run for life, because clearly I tried to do it the other way, of where my appearance was most important, I only identified as a runner, felt that was all I had to offer the world. And I just had a horrible relationship to myself. If that didn't work, then surely there had to be a better way. So that's where I thought, well, how can I find joy in my running? And that's really what I worked on. And that spoke to the sustainability piece, the general lifelong sustainable runner piece. And during that time, I started giving back. As I said, I started running as a guide because everything in my running career had been very selfish. I'd done everything for myself. I'd expected things of other people. And I really recognized the leveling up that happened with my running by giving back. And then the third piece, environmental, I had always had a passion about, but it was getting to the point where people were starting to ask me a lot about what they could do, because everyone feels like part of the problem. Everyone feels like they are being judged. They feel like unless they give up flying completely and go vegan overnight, well, they're not doing it good enough. And I thought there has to be a better way of bringing people in, not doing like, unless you're taking a boat across the Atlantic, you're not doing this right. And so I had this idea that I wanted to do sustainability in this holistic sense. And I'd come to meet Zoe a few months ago, few months prior, and I really wanted her to do it with me. I admired her writing. I knew she was a very good editor. I admired her as a human being and what she stood for. And so, yeah, I nervously, as if I was asking her out on a date, asked her if she'd write a book with me, and she said yes. So the rest was history.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so that's why I do like the fact that the title is Becoming a Sustainable Runner,
Yes.
because I feel like even in the portion that I've been able to cover so far in the book, it doesn't feel like it's like, here are all the things that you got to get rid of. It's kind of like, helping take some smaller steps to kind of
Yeah.
get there, which I often feel like a lot of these things that I'm thinking about, like in terms of how much I'm flying around the country and the world to do these events, and how many products come through, my basement, from all the live stream unboxings that I do.
Mm.
But I'm like, well, what are some other ways that I can, kind of slowly start to chip away until that doesn't feel like it's overwhelming. And then maybe, just continually kind of growing rather than suddenly having to be something. Like all of a sudden tomorrow I can become something. Seems more manageable, in a lot of ways. And I appreciate the kind of patience that the book provides.
Yes, and you're exactly right with the word becoming, because we are not at the end point here either. That's the point, is it's not like, oh, look at us from our high viewpoint of you people down there who like have a lot to learn. It's literally like we are halfway up this mountain, maybe a little bit higher than you, but like we're all in this struggle together. So I really wanted to make it very like digestible and accessible, and make people believe that, like you said, they can take little steps from wherever they are.
And then those little steps can also be like, whether you're talking about like, how do you reduce your carbon footprint, or how do we get races to reduce their carbon footprints, but also like, how do you approach running in a way that is sustainable or manageable in the long run, and not just over the training cycle. And I think that
Exactly.
also is something that I feel like we're starting to see a lot of in like social media, even because like I feel like over the pandemic, it was very much everything was David Goggins, like who's going to carry the boats, and now everything is like, now everything is kind of switching to like, after like a couple of years of that, it was like, here's how you heal your plantar fasciitis, and here's how you handle your runner's knee because you were carrying boats too long, like that kind of thing. And then I feel like now it's going to be like, all right, well, now that I've chased PRs for several years, now what? And I feel like this is, again, like I said, it's very timely, where I feel like we're hitting that life cycle of kind of like the communal or the collective approach and relationship with running, where we're all now like, all right, now how do we all know that we're in it for the long haul? How do we really go about doing that?
Yes, exactly. And that's something that can be really hard to step away from, especially as I mentioned earlier, like if it's something like a BQ or some kind of, I want to break 4 hours in the marathon, it's really hard to like not achieve it and then not be like, okay, I'll pick the next race three months down the road, and instead like look at the holistic approach. And that's a lot of what we do, is give people just some things to think about in terms of like other stresses in your life, or in terms of what is going on around you that could be contributing to the fact that you are not able to maybe give all to your running that you might want to, because life just isn't going to allow it at that time. And that is okay. It doesn't mean there won't be another time that you can't do the really grit, dig in, but also sometimes we're just going to be able to do minimal and call it the best we can. And that's okay too.
Can I ask you like a kind of like a logistical question about the book? Like, how did you guys go about like who's writing what? Was it kind of like open Google Doc, joint session, and then like you're watching the cursor dance across this page, or it's like, I'll do this chapter, you do that? Like, how did that?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. No, I feel like that would be very stressful if we were working on the same doc, and it's like page 200 and you're like, please save. No, I could not handle that. No, it was done chapter by chapter. I want to actually just say, as multiple people have asked, I was primarily a half marathon marathoner. So yeah, I ran in the world championships in the half marathon. The marathon was kind of my thing before super shoes. So when I say my time now, it sounds pretty slow. But the super shoes didn't exist back then. So yeah, it was a different time. Yes, so Zoe and I would like take chapters each. We met up in Boulder not long after we had signed the contract, and really assigned chapters each. We would kind of talk through who should do what chapter, and then we would each write it. Then we would swap it over. So she would edit mine, I would edit hers. And it's interesting because Zoe is very much she's the editor-in-chief at Trail Runner magazine. And so she was very much in this, like, got to be concise, got to make it not personal. This is very, got to be very neutral, got to be very, third person. And I had come from this like fluffy, very much the way I talk right now. And so it was really interesting because she would send me a chapter and it would be 4 pages, and I'd send her one and it'd be 19. And so then she'd like chop massive chunks of my sections to be like, this is the same as this. Let's get rid of this bit. And I was like, give me a bit more personality here. Make this personal. What did you do there? How did that make you feel? But the beautiful thing about that, and I'd love to hear your thoughts here, was that I feel like we maintained, because of that, somewhat of a neutral voice. And I think there's some things that people have known me for a long time will be able to tell that I wrote. But I think beyond that, there should be a pretty standard voice. And we liked that because it was very much a meeting in the middle.
Yeah, I mean, I've jumped around because I wanted to try and sample from various parts of the book. Before our discussion today, and I didn't get the sense that like, oh, this is a Zoe chapter and this is a Tina chapter. Like, I didn't know what to expect in the book, and I really thought it would be like Tina says, and it would be like a Tina chapter, and then Zoe says, and then there'd be a different subject than the Zoe chapter. I didn't get the sense there, and I was trying to figure out like, wait, who wrote this one? I'm not sure. So I feel like if that was the goal, it definitely was successful. That's because good. I was having a hard time kind of picking that out. Yeah. But I think like that there are personal anecdotes.
Yeah, no, there's definitely Tina's story, Zoe's story. Those are very personal. But I think people will soon people who know me will know that it'll be pretty clear that I wrote the body image chapter.
Okay.
But beyond that, I think we kind of kept a neutral voice. And not that Zoe doesn't talk about that, but that is a definite passion area of mine that I talk about often.
Was it intimidating to work with Zoe? I feel like if I were working on, and maybe this says more about me than anything, if I were working on any sort of literary type project with Zoe Rome, I'd be incredibly intimidated.
Yes, more just from the sense of, she would be editing my chapters, and I could tell I was thinking about the fact of like how she reads all these articles, and so she probably has in her mind like, this is good, oh god, this is going to take a lot of work, and I didn't want to fall on that, oh god, this is going to take a lot of work end of things.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes I did, but she was very gracious with it. And so, but that was the nice thing for me. I can sit down and just go and like type something out. For her, she'd be staring at the blinking cursor. But so for me, I got it out quickly, and then she was very good at editing, whereas I was very good at like helping her to like tease out pieces of the art of the whatever she was talking about to make it more substantial and more personal. So I feel like actually it allowed us to both use our strengths.
That's awesome. Because I could definitely relate to like that kind of feeling, and by like being intimidated by Zoe, she's just such a so very good at what she does at her job.
Yeah.
Like I just wouldn't want to be the reason why she sighs. You know what I mean?
Yes,
and so like
feel that.
I'm like, I know it's going to happen, but let's try to keep it to a minimum. You know,
I definitely felt that at times. Like, oh, she's going to read this and be like, oh. Yeah, when she sees my 19 pages show up in her inbox. Yeah.
But now that the book is done, how long did this take from kind of like when you had the idea and were starting to pitch it? Well, let's start there. Like you had the idea for this book, you start pitching it around. Do you have an agent? Do you pitch it to agents? Like what is that part of this process like?
I mean, I can't speak to everyone, but for us personally, I had a connection to Human Kinetics, who was our publisher, through Neely Spence Gracie, who's another elite athlete. She had written a book for them, and she had said to me that they were looking for other people to write books, and I connected with them. I think before actually I connected with Zoe to see if they were interested, and they were. And so then Zoe and I had to craft a proposal for them where you have to write 2 chapters, I think, plus all this information. And that was where Zoe really could shine, because when it was like give a summary of your book, I would have given an 8-page summary, and she was able to concisely explain exactly what we were doing. And so, yeah, we handed in the proposal. They came back to us with, a contract. We signed it. And this was probably, I think maybe like April 2022. Yeah, April 2022, maybe. Was it 21? It might have even been 21. I actually can't remember which year it was.
Anything that happened in 2021 is a
yeah, I feel like it maybe was 2021 actually.
Okay.
But I do remember saying, like, I remember us texting each other like, let's get this knocked out in 6 months. And I remember Zoe texting me saying LFG, and I was like, yeah, let's do it. And then you're like, oh, actually, this is a book. You can't write a book in 6 months when we both had other jobs, and I had kids as well. So yeah, I remember being reality checked and them saying, we're probably shooting for like summer 2023, and thinking, what? Summer 23? That's like a long time away. So it's an interesting process.
And so then from like the contract signing to kind of like first draft ish or whatever kind of like way that makes it, can you break down like from that point when you have 2 chapters, which probably got changed very substantially by the time they made it to the book, to like when you're like, you kind of like, here's our book, to like the publisher? Like how long does that part take?
Yeah, well, it's interesting with the 2 chapters, because you write those 2 chapters probably 3 to 4 months before you start anything else. So when you go to write the book, you actually can't remember what you even wrote about. So then some things we wrote in one of the other chapters, and then after I sent it, I read back through that other chapter and I thought, oh God, so much of that is exactly the same as what I just said. So now you have to decide whether you keep it in which chapter and go through it that way. But you hand in chapter by chapter until you've got all those chapters, and then you have a what's it called? A development editor who goes through it and looks at flow. And the tricky thing is with books is, in my head, I think I thought, because Zoe and I had edited it a bit for each other, I think I thought that we like kind of had it down. And then when the editor went through, they would say, oh, you spelt there wrong, which I don't generally, but that kind of example. No, it's like, this entire section doesn't make sense. And you're like, or like, you need to take this section and move it to a different chapter. So it's like, oh, where do I even begin? And then you have to read the whole chapter and make it flow. And so it messes with your head trying to do the editing. And so it goes to a development editor who measures the flow and does all that stuff. And then you go through it again. You probably go through the whole thing. I mean, we probably went through it 6 or 7 times each. It's a lot. And yet, when I recorded the audiobook, I came out of there feeling, I was like, can I read one? Because it is so hard to read out loud, because you fill in your head, you kind of fill in sentences, but you have to read it word for word how it's written. And I came out of there like, can I even write? Like, this is like garbage. What did we do? How did I not catch that run-on sentence? And so I really was like, oh, this is so bad, for how many times we read it. But then when I got the physical copy in my hand, I was like, wow, I'm actually really proud of this. So it probably took first draft of where we handed everything in, I would say, was probably about a year ago. So yes, it must have been 21, probably about a year ago. And then we had to let go of it for good in about January. So that in itself was weird. This January this year.
Wow. Coming back to the book now, other than like certain things that you might want to change, like grammatically, are you like, oh, if I had to do this again, I would completely change it?
I think I would just spend more time on building out what each chapter was before we even submit the proposal. Because I think that's where I had the most trouble, was, like I said, I'd written essentially the same thing in two of the chapters, but I couldn't, it'd be like, oh, I really love the sentence in this chapter, but I really love this sentence in this chapter. And it's trying to decide which ones to keep and how to move it. So I would probably have built it out more. But the tricky thing with that is, and this is what I've said a lot, is during a 2-year process, you evolve and grow a lot as a human. So even things that you where you might be at the start of the writing process, you're not there at the end. And so it's a difficult thing to, these things that you learn, you've got to insert them along the way, but you're not sure exactly where they should go. So I don't know if I would change anything other than, maybe really building out the flow of it a bit better.
Okay. Daniel Burton wants to know, where can you purchase the book?
Well, there's a website called Becoming a Sustainable Runner.com. And so if you go there, it's got all the links to all the various Target, Barnes & Noble, bookshop.org. You can obviously call your local bookstore and get them to stock a copy. And yes, Amazon is definitely there as well. So yeah, anywhere you want to find it. If anyone's in the UK, Waterstones has it. All the worldwide Amazons have it. So yeah, thank you.
Awesome. And how are the sales? Because the book came out a week ago now.
Yep, a week ago today. Yeah.
How's it going so far?
They haven't given me any numbers, which is quite stressful. I've kind of let go of most numbers in my life now. I don't really pay attention to any numbers, but this is driving me a little bit crazy. I kind of want to call them and be like, hey, where are we at? We have had a lot of the major marathons have really supported us, and a lot of the brands I work with have supported and bought 100 copies, which is huge. So very exciting in that way. But as for actual numbers, I have no idea. And that's the weird thing. You're like, well, what should I expect?
Yeah,
Is
yeah,
200? Is
yeah.
it 200 or are we at 2000? Like,
Yeah, yeah.
it's an interesting feeling.
All right. And you did a book event while you were up in Leadville,
Hmm.
right?
Yes. Yeah.
How
So
was
we
that
had a
going?
launch event at a place called the Golden Burrow, which is a vegan restaurant. It was really fun. It's interesting. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, actually. I really think, and actually, I want to see this from people watching this or listening to this. I really think, for the most part, people are over panels. You did an amazing panel in Atlanta, and I love that. But I feel like people are a bit burned out on panels, and so we just did like a meet and greet. Like we were there, we went and
Mhm.
talked to people, and it felt much more enjoyable because it wasn't like everyone had to sit and commit to an hour talk. It didn't mean we had to find. It meant we didn't have to find someone. It was just very like conversational. I made sure to go over to anyone who was on their own, so they felt welcomed in. And so yeah, we just did like a meet and greet, and it went very, very well, and we sold a lot of books. So we were excited, and it was interesting going into the trail world because the crowd is very different
Okay.
to the road stuff I've done.
Um, did was there a good reception in some of the trail community? Because I
Yeah,
feel like
yeah.
part of the trail community absolutely is going to eat this book up, but I
Yes.
also feel like there's another part of the trail community that is probably going to be like, not for me.
Yeah, I do agree. And it was interesting, actually. Zoe and I definitely, because she comes from the trail world, I come from
Mhm.
the road world. There were so many things where we'd have to remind each other to give an example of the other one as well,
Oh, okay.
because you get stuck in what your world is. And so, I actually wrote at one point about the trail world being really relaxed and people don't care that much about performance. And she was like, I wouldn't agree with that at all. So, but in my head, trail runners
Yeah.
are like, yeah, like, cool, you do what you want to do. Like, let's just be chill. But obviously they're not. But yeah, so that it was fun that that I'm getting to see the trail world from a different perspective. Although I will say, walking around in Leadville, it feels like so many people look exactly the same. The men, like, I mean, you're like, do I know that person? No, they look. Do I know that person? Like it feels like you know everyone, but you don't because a lot of them look the same. So it is a very different world in that way.
That's an interesting thing. I like that question a lot. Stevie says, personally, I see a panel on trekking poles. I think I could be a good moderator for that one because
Mm.
I
You could
genuinely
do
just
a
don't know.
competition of how quickly people can put this together.
Um, I I've seen people that are like have done this kind of like almost like a
Like a
like a
pull out
gun
gun.
draw where they just pull them out and then just like whoosh, and all of a sudden there's trekking poles and I'm just like, I don't know. I feel like I'd have to stop running. Like I have to
Mhm.
stop, get them out of my pack, and do all that. But um, I actually would like to see a panel on trekking poles. But it's very interesting feedback because I actually have a call later this afternoon about an event that I'd like to do at the Chicago Marathon. And the brand that I want to work with, they're like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, I don't know. We do group runs. I'm doing a group run with ASICs and that's been fun. But like, I also want a non-running way to get together
Mm.
because maybe someone is in town with their coach and their coach is having a group run. And so they don't want to do two group runs, you
Yeah.
know? And so I'm always trying to figure out what are the best ways we can do that and make it fun for the people that are
Mm.
there.
Or
And so, like,
injured, sometimes you got an
true.
injury and you want to come
Yeah.
and you feel like I've seen people like hang out in the wherever it is, and I'm always like, I'm sorry to
Yeah.
leave you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, that's why I'm like, some of the things that they suggested were like, we could do that or just a meet and greet. And I'm like,
Hmm.
how does that work? I just stand there and then people come and say hi and like, what? I'm not sure. I understand those words, meet and greet, but I'm like, how does that work?
I think
Like,
people
I've
would
never,
love that with you. I think
okay.
people would eat it up, like having that opportunity. Yeah.
So I'm just like, I'm like, that's an interesting perspective in terms of like, well, that's a lot less work for me if I don't have to do a
Yeah.
live stream, then
Yeah.
that's so much less equipment that I have to
Yeah.
bring, and we don't have to have a sound person, and we can just
Mhm.
kind of, just skip to the after part, which is kind of
Mhm.
like, I guess, a meet and greet where there was snacks and
Mhm.
beverages when we were at that event in Atlanta.
Yeah. Yeah, 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 exactly, and
It is
that was
interesting.
fun. Yeah.
Okay, okay. I feel like, yeah. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? Are you guys gonna who's gonna be in Chicago? What would you guys rather do? Sit in
Mm.
for a live stream live, or do just a meet and greet? somewhere else. I don't know.
And yes, I live in St. Louis.
Video guy man 7 says, excuse me. Video guy man 7 says he's going to do the 5K on Saturday morning, so definitely would like a way to meet up. That's not another shakeout. Yeah. See, so my shakeout is usually the same time as the 5K, and so like a lot of times people miss me that way because they're already they want to do that race. So I don't know. Well, I'm hoping that there will be. Andrew Scott wants to know if there'll be snacks.
That's an important question.
It is an important question, but like we haven't even figured out the format yet. So I mean, like that's like way down. I mean, I probably should have planned this.
I'm sure there will be some kind of snacks though. Like
I hope
a brand would definitely jump all over that to offer you snacks up if you're asking. I'm sure.
Yeah, so I think that we'll have to get that figured out a little bit.
Well,
I'm hoping there'll be at least hydration because it's the day before a marathon. So, yeah, Pam Sanchez says meet and greet. Phil Hartman says, "How about a Kafuzi end of the race dry heave impression contest?" that would actually be.
You got a video of dry heaving somewhere?
I have many. Okay. It's become like a
thing.
That's
your thing, is it?
Yeah. I tried. I've tried to. I went on a trip in Colorado, Hut Run Hut. We were in the mountains, and like a lot of people, like some people that were there were like Solomon pros, and some people that were there were other like trail running people, like trail running media. And then there's like me. I run in the woods near my house. I don't often say that I'm a trail runner, but I say like I like to run in the woods, and I'm a flatlander for sure. And then like we're at the top of like one of the many summits that we hit that week, and I'm like filming myself like dry heaving because I'm at the top, like and everyone else is like sauntering uphill, and I'm running, and I'm like my heart rate is like pegged at like VO2 max, so I'm like running like a 5K, at least my heart thinks it is, and I'm just like coughing at the end, and they're like, you okay? And I'm like, you know what, it's hard to explain, but the audience loves this. I don't know.
I gotta imagine the people who like don't really understand technology that much, and they're not like that plugged in, and they're like, why is he like filming himself?
Well, I mean, it was like media people that were there, so they understood that part, but they were like, the dry heaving? I was like, yeah, if I pass out, pick up the camera and film it, like then wake me up, So I was like, this will be great. This will be great footage.
I'll credit you if you stand there over me passed out.
Yeah. We'll get you the photo credit. I'll put your handle in the description. But yeah,
that's funny.
Yeah, Dominic Smernowski says we should just live stream the meet.
I like that idea. Yeah,
that's one way to do it too. All right, cool. Pork and
no one
beans.
said a panel. Do you know?
No one has voted for a panel.
I know. I think people are kind of a bit burned out on them. Obviously, the way you do it is a little bit different. So, but I think if I hosted a panel, because I've done so many over the years, I honestly don't think many people would come.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe. I think people would go, but like I just think that like it is to the point where, well, my friend like Laura Green has kind of like made fun of like the whole like Boston scene where it's like you have to go to like 5 shakeout runs and 5 panels over the course of like 2 or 3 days, and then you have to run the Boston Marathon. So I'm like, all right, well, like if it's getting to the point where it's being lampooned, then maybe it's time to freshen things up a little bit. So
yeah.
Pork and Bean says, STL gang, I moved away, but glad to have grown up there. When did you get to St. Louis?
Right before the pandemic. So
okay.
Kind of moved here, and then the pandemic hit. I met Shannon, as she wrote earlier, not long after I moved here. And then pandemic shut us down. So people were like, oh, how long have you lived there? And I'm like, well, I've been here 4 years, but I feel like it's only been 2. So not that long, but it kind of is in numbers.
Yeah. Okay. And where were you before that?
I bounced around a lot. I was in Kentucky, Philadelphia, and then I went to school in Michigan.
Okay. And then how are you in St. Louis?
My husband is started the track and field cross country program at University of Missouri in St. Louis.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So I go where he goes.
Yeah, I was not aware of that. That's cool.
Yeah.
Interesting. Phil Hartman, see, Calvin Huang says panels are hard to come to versus internet live stream. So, okay. Interesting. And Phil Hartman says, in all seriousness, a meet and greet with merch would be awesome. See, like, here's a logistical question that I had. So you had your meet and greet
Mm-hmm.
in Leadville,
Mm-hmm.
and then you sold a lot of books.
Mm-hmm.
Who's the person like doing like the square card reader thing? Like,
So, well, firstly, I noticed anyone hovering around the books, and I was like,
okay, yeah,
"Hi!" Like
okay,
if I didn't know them, "Hi,"
yeah,
and they'd
okay,
be like, "Oh, that's you," and I'm like, "Yep,
mhm,
that's me." So that was a big part of it, but we just did Venmo.
okay,
So we had Zoe did it. She made a little
mhm,
square because she
okay,
brought all the books because she was driving. I didn't want to
okay,
load my suitcase with
sure,
books.
yeah, yeah,
And then yeah, just had a Venmo. So it was really easy. And yeah, it worked really well. So the only thing that is tricky, and you probably have had this, like at your after your meet and greet after your panel, is it's sometimes tough because you want to talk to one person who's talking to you, but you can sometimes feel other people ready, like
yeah,
almost like next in line.
yeah,
And
yeah,
so you're like kind of like, okay, I need to wrap up here, but make sure this person feels recognized, but then maybe there's other people around. So that's the only tough thing. But in my experience, everyone is very understanding that there's only one person. And sometimes you can kind of be like, introduce people, and sometimes people
okay,
start talking while they're waiting, and so that's what I really love, is that like it allows everyone to kind of make new friends regardless. And so yeah, that's where I've really enjoyed it.
okay. All right, I'm gonna pitch the meet and greet idea this
Okay.
afternoon then,
Yes, i want to
because
i want to see what
I
you
like the
say
sound.
for
I
Chicago
don't.
you're talking about.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm hoping to.
I'll try and be there.
Yeah, and then I don't know if I'll have merch available at that time or anything to sell. But like my other big
You
concern
can
is
sell
like
these if you want. I can give you a bunch of these.
bring some books. Bring some books. We'll do it.
I will if I come. Yeah, I'm working with
um,
the marathon, so it depends what they have me doing in
oh,
that
okay.
time. Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. You're going direct to the source then.
Yeah,
Are you
they
gonna are you gonna do another expo interview?
expo interview.
Because you
Like
got
a panel.
interviewed at
Yes, I
Peachtree.
do have a panel. So yeah, anyone at Chicago,
There's a panel.
a panel. Yeah, but it's only 20 minutes, so it's a short
Okay.
one. A 20-minute panel. Actually, I don't know if it is a panel now I say that. I think it might just be me talking for 20
Okay.
minutes on Thursday, and then they actually have given me a space in the expo, so I'll be there.
Nice.
I think Chris Mosier has potentially.
Oh, okay.
We'll double confirm with him, but he said
Oh
he
yeah.
did last year, and he said he would again this year.
Okay, that's great. I
And
know
then
Chris.
yeah.
I met him very briefly a couple years ago.
Hmm.
But yeah, Chris, because he's in Chicago.
Yeah.
Well, when I lived in Chicago.
Hmm.
Yeah, Chris is great.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll be doing some panel hosting, but then I have to run off and do stuff with the sustainability team. So if anyone sees the zero waste stations, there's a good chance I'll be hanging around one of those.
Very cool. Very cool. Like here's a question that I have for you, and it seems kind of unrelated, but I know that you've done a lot of content around recycling in your Instagram stories,
Hmm.
and you talk about recycling quite a bit in the book. Two questions. One, I think I know the answer because I've seen your Instagram stories about it. Are pizza boxes recyclable? It's cardboard, so I would think it's recyclable, but are they recyclable?
No, no.
And that's because there's food grease on
Is
them.
the grease. Yeah. So anything with food, yeah, this is a point I could talk about all day, every day. Anything with food in it. So if you're throwing anything in your recycling, and obviously I don't know everywhere people are. There may be somewhere in the world where someone doesn't have to do this. If you have any remnants, so peanut butter, you better like scrub that clean with soap to get the peanut butter remnants out. Pizza boxes do not, because they have grease in them. They can be composted. So if you have a compost pickup, then you can
Okay.
do that, but not recycling. Same with any jars or anything must be cleaned. And so yes, that is a common misconception, and also not even that, but if you have a contaminated anything in your recycling bin, that entire thing will be thrown out. So like everything that is touching that contaminated thing will be thrown
Man,
in the trash. So
that sounds very difficult.
yeah, but then
Um,
again in the book you'll see this pretty in depth.
mm,
We kind of break the bubble that I know, at least for me, people recycling is kind of the catch, like the, well, I recycle,
yeah.
But
Yeah.
like I take the argument in the book that maybe would have been better if we didn't recycle, because it allows us to feel like we're off the hook, and there's so many more important
Mm-hmm.
ways we could do things.
Yeah, I see that like when I see like the soda companies saying like, "Hey, put your soda bottles back in these soda bottle recycling containers," and I'm like, coming from a company that sells soda bottles.
Exactly. Yes. No.
Right.
I mean, they were the one that created disposable. They
Mhm.
had to convince people to use disposable plastic because people just reused things, and then they
Mhm.
realized they weren't selling enough stuff. So then and we share this in the book. So then that's
Mhm.
how they came up with the idea of like disposable plastic, and now we don't know any other way.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's also answered my second question of like, how much do I need to clean stuff before I put it in the recycling? It seems like a lot. It's a lot.
Yeah, and then Lewis's question: what if a circle was cut off as well? I mean, I guess that would work if you cut out the circle of grease
Well,
and
here's my
remove the
question.
flap, the like.
Yeah, is like,
Yeah,
well, like, what if the top of the pizza box doesn't have visible
yeah.
grease on it?
I mean, if you want to rip that
Okay.
off, yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Um, See, but I would maybe say, is there a different way you could use the top of the box for something else? Like, is there something you can use it for? Like, especially if you have kids, they could use
Mhm.
that cardboard for something, some kind of art. I don't know about anyone else's kids, but my
Yeah.
daughter is craft obsessed. So
Yeah.
she uses all kinds of stuff. But to answer your question, yes, you kind of need to use soap and water, or at least get like a cloth and clean it out properly.
Okay.
Which obviously, again, hits the problem of like we're using loads of water.
Yeah.
And
CV76 mentioned that too.
yeah, like, so you're, where do you draw the line, really? Which is again why we say don't lean on recycling. There's a reason it's reduce,
Right.
reuse,
Right. Right.
recycle. So don't lean on recycling as your only way to take care of things, because it less than 5% of plastic ever has been recycled, which is
That's
really
very
bad.
sad.
Yeah.
But what about stuff like
Yeah, good for marathon signs. I like that.
yeah, video says pizza box to get for marathon signs. I do like that because then it's just like then the other side of it is like the other spectators just looking at a sign of pizza. You know what I mean? Like a cartoon Italian guy being like, "Here's your delicious pizza." You know, like I feel like that's kind of fun
So
as
true.
well. That works. Um, I lost my train of thought on that now. I had something else that I was going to go with that.
That was a good idea. I've never thought of that, running it through the dishwasher. I've never thought of that. That's very smart.
Well, who does that? Vanessa Martinez run recyclables to the dishwasher with the dishes. That
That's a good
I've
idea.
never thought of that. That has never occurred to me.
Me
But
neither.
okay. Yeah, like in my house, like we do a lot of the shoe boxes that come in end up getting covered in like glitter glue and sparkles and beads and stuff like that. They become like decorative boxes
Yeah.
that end up never holding anything, and then
Mm.
they kind of like end up like living on the coffee table for a long time until I can quietly throw them away later.
Oh, I heard you. I found an amazing video on Instagram the other day about throwing away your kids' art, and it brought me so much joy because it was just perfect, like explanation to a kid when they find their art in the trash. It was so cute.
Yeah, there's a shoebox that's been sitting on the kitchen counter for a good like month, and I thought that my older daughter was using it for something. And finally yesterday, I'm like, "Look, this has been here the entire summer. Are you going to do anything with this box or not?" And she's like, "My sister put it there," and I was like, "Oh, okay. We've been saving this box for someone, and no one actually wants to do anything with it." And I'm like, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay." And then like the Fight Club quote, like the things we own end up owning us. I'm like, this Converse shoebox definitely owned this entire family for the last 3 months.
So true. So true.
Do you save a lot of the kids' art?
Within reason. My daughter is like insane. She actually, so if anyone seen Toy Story 4? Have you seen Toy Story 4?
I love the Toy Story
You know
movies.
Forky? She had
Mhm.
never seen Toy Story 4, but she came up with Cuppy, and it's
Oh, okay.
literally an old cup, like a plastic cup. She like sealed off the bottom and put some things inside of it to make it so she could shake it and it makes noise.
Mhm.
She cut out arms. She cut out a tail. It's a cat. She stuck eyes on it. And now she has it. I wish I could grab it. It's like right over there. Yeah, it's called Cuppy. So things like that. How do I throw that away? But
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely try and hide a lot of things in the recycling. paper whenever I can when she's not paying attention. But she's getting to the age where she's definitely like, "Hey, where did this go?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't know, somewhere."
Yeah, my kids never ask where things went. I
Yeah.
I love secret throwing things away. My wife hates that. It gets her very upset when I secret throw stuff away. And she's the person that will notice. She'd be like, "Hey, that container full of stickers from a variety of seasons." Like she could tell if I've removed like 4 sheets from it because I'm like, these are duplicates anyway. We have very many Easter stickers. We're not going to need them. We're probably going to get more next Easter. I think I can throw away 2 sheets, and that's my little subversive, maybe we're getting into some relationship dynamics here, but I'll just throw some away. And she'll be like, "Hey, did you touch the stickers?" I'd be like, "Yes, I did." Because I can't lie to her.
Yeah, no, I am definitely the gun ho one with getting rid of things. Sometimes Steve
Okay.
needs them, and he's like, "Where's this?" And I'm like, I give it away." He's like, "Oh, I needed that." All right, should I go get Cuppy?
Everyone wants to see Cuppy.
All right,
Vanessa wants to
I'm
see
gonna be
Cuppy.
less than 30 seconds. It's just
Yeah, it's okay. Don't worry. I've left for like minutes at a time before. I'm very excited to see Cuppy. Videos wants to see Cuppy. For those of you who are listening, you've heard the description of
got a few things. There's 3 things here.
Now you can. These are things now that you will never be able to get rid of.
No. Okay, this is Cuppy. Are you ready?
The Cuppy is awesome. That's great. I love that. It does look like a cat.
Yep. So this is Cuppy.
Mm-hmm.
This is a butterfly. See, my daughter is very artsy.
Yeah.
This is a butterfly, and this is all stuff she found around the house.
Yeah.
And then this is a what's this? I don't know, a plant, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So yeah, and there's even some soil in there. You see?
Oh, okay.
It's not
Very
soil,
good.
but it's
Very nice.
soil. So yeah, but Cuppy, I think it's even got some like jingly things in it. I think Cuppy is with us for life now.
Yeah. I feel like
remind me of Forky. I was like, what are the chances she came up with the name Cuppy?
So, I mean, it is a cup.
That's true.
But I like Cuppy a lot. And I like all the other art. I also love, and maybe this is bad. We're talking about sustainable things because I know they're probably made out of plastic. But I love fake plants. I'm terrible at keeping plants alive, and so like fake plants I think are great. My wife bought decorative fake plants to put like on the counter in the guest bathroom, and those are the best looking plants in the entire house.
Yeah, I don't actually have any fake ones, but yeah, it is like a weekly thing that I go around and water all my plants. You can see there's some.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Over there. There's some over there. Oh, this way.
Yeah, we might be overwatering our plants, but then we'll travel and then we won't water them for a long time. Yeah. We just moved to a house in the suburbs, and so we have space for like the first time as a family ever. And so the girls wanted to buy like a raised flower, like a garden box, and we filled it with dirt, and they went crazy. I was like, let's do like 3 plants, like a tomato plant, maybe some carrots and like cucumbers or zucchini, and they're like, no. And then they came back with like 8 different kinds of vegetables, and then we had to buy another little flower box for like the 6 kinds of flowers they wanted. It didn't grow for the longest time. And then like we went on vacation, and then when we came back, like things were sprouting.
Yeah.
But it had been so long. And we did take a picture of like where we planted all the seeds and what we planted and stuff. But it had been so long that for a long time I was convinced that we just were growing really nice weeds in our garden box. Because I couldn't tell what anything, like, honestly, I don't know what a carrot plant looks like. And I don't know even what like a zucchini plant really looks, unless there's zucchini on it. I don't know what a zucchini plant like looks like.
I'll send you a video later. I'll take you around my garden and show you all the things for next year.
It.
Although it is overwhelming. Like when you first start, you're like there's like companion plants, things that are supposed to be together, like how close they're supposed to be. It's definitely overwhelming, and I'm still a bit confused.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure, like, if I was pretty sure that these were all weeds, because we have like behind our house is like kind of like a water something area where they just let like natural flowers and grasses grow, which actually are much prettier than anything else that grows in my yard or near
Mm.
my yard.
Mhm.
So I thought it was just more of that. But then we just saw some little cherry tomatoes starting to
Oh, that's
pop up.
good.
So I'm
That's
like, oh,
okay.
okay. Well, at
Doesn't
least
that
some of
feel
these are.
good though?
It
Like
does. It
seeing that
does.
you grew some food that can sustain, maybe not sustain, but be a part of
Yeah.
your family's like eating. I don't know. I think that's
Yeah, one of the reasons we did it is because we're like, maybe it'll help us get the kids to eat more vegetables.
yeah.
But I was like, hey guys, look, we got tomatoes. And they're like, oh, this is great. And I'm like, because you want to eat them? And they're like, no, we don't want to eat that. But it's fun to grow them.
Pretty
I'm
to
like,
eat.
okay, all right. I love tomatoes though, so
Yeah, me too.
it'll be fine. All right. All right. Calvin says zucchini if you want an easy one that
I
spirals into
agree.
trying to give them away to everyone
I
you
know.
know.
Yeah, it really is.
It's funny because my mother-in-law started growing zucchini, and like around this time every year, I have to figure out 15 different ways to try and eat all the zucchini, which I
Mhm.
don't have a problem with. I love zucchini. But my father used to grow zucchini in his garden a while ago. They say they've since moved, which I think is the reason why I don't have to worry about the zucchini anymore. But his were like, they were as large as a forearm. I'm like, Dad, what are you feeding these plants? Like, I don't think this is zucchini. Something's wrong. I mean, he lived in New Jersey, so I'm like, it is the Garden State, but I'm like, is there something in the soil there? Because like, zucchini shouldn't be that big.
Oh
It was
yeah,
very scary.
that's
It was
awesome.
terrifying.
It's terrifying. Use it as a weapon.
Yeah. All right. Any last thing before I mean, we've been on for a long time, and I appreciate you spending some time with us today. Any last thoughts that you would like to share with everyone on the book
I
before we
think
get
it's
going for today?
just, well, firstly, that I mean, I have mentioned this, but when it's about sustainability, I think most people, especially who know me, assume it's going to be all environmental, but that's actually only a third of the book.
Mhm.
And even with that, we make it very realistic. We're not going to tell you to never fly again or go vegan or get rid of your car. Like, it's just about making you feel like a part of the solution. And there are some hard things to read. You know, there are going to be some things that are really going to make you be like, nope, nope, nope. Like, you're gonna want to like run away. But I think these are things that as you read them, like for example, if food waste were a country, in terms of carbon emissions, it would be the third largest in the world. Like, that's kind of sickening to think about.
Mhm.
But you know, is that information we should know? Yeah. So I hope that this book makes it digestible for you. As I said, we talk about your relationship to running, your relationship to yourself. And we've really seen some people be very impacted by the words in those early chapters. And I hope for you, if you are someone who does get a bit caught up in numbers of any kind, it helps you to kind of process through that and think of things differently.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to bring this with me on my and feel very guilty about it because I'll be reading it on a couple of long flights across the Atlantic Ocean. So I'm going to feel guilty about it, but hopefully this will, help me figure out ways that I can improve. I'm looking
Yes.
forward to it. And don't forget, guys, you can get this book at becomingaSustainableRunner.com.
Yeah, thank you
Thanks
so
so much
much.
for coming onto the live stream for today.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you and everyone who joined us today.
All right, guys, this is going to be the last live stream for me because I'm leaving for the airport by tomorrow. So you guys won't hear from me for a little while. But by the time I get back, hopefully I'll have finished the book. But I'll also have had lots of adventures to tell you about. I can't wait to tell you guys about them when I get back. And I'll see you guys in about a week and a half. Until then, be safe out there, everybody. Thanks.
Bye.